All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're going to tackle a statistical paradox that might just flip your whole understanding of the fight against cancer on its head. It's a fascinating story about how sometimes our greatest successes can look a lot like our biggest failures. So, get this. What if I told you that since 1980, the total number of people dying from cancer worldwide has shot up by a staggering 120%? Sounds pretty bad, right? But then, what if I told you that according to the exact same data, your personal risk of dying from cancer is actually 25% lower than it was back then? It feels like it just can't be true. How on earth can total deaths more than double while your individual risk takes a nosedive? Okay, so here's the kicker. All these numbers we're about to look at, they're not from different studies trying to argue with each other. Nope, they all come from the exact same data set, the gold standard global burden of disease study. They don't contradict each other, they're answering three totally different questions. First, let's tackle that huge number, a 120% increase in absolute cancer deaths. This is the steep mountain. And for hospital administrators, for public health officials, this number is their everyday reality. It means we need more hospital beds, more chemo drugs, more nurses, more everything. It's a real-world tidal wave of need. But here's our first clue in solving this mystery. This number, the crude death rate, is only up 20%. So what's the deal with that huge gap? It's actually pretty simple. There are just way more of us on the planet than there were in 1980. The global population has exploded. And more people, well, that's going to mean more deaths from everything. It's not a perfect analogy, but think of it like a city doubling in size. You're going to have more car accidents for sure, but the rate of accidents per driver might have actually gone down. And that brings us to the most important number of all. We call this one the blue line. While those other numbers are climbing, this one is dropping like a rock, down 25%. This is the age-standardized death rate, and this little number tells the real story here. We are, without a doubt, getting better at fighting this disease. It means that if you're, say, 65 years old today, you are significantly less likely to die of cancer than a 65-year-old was back in the 1980s. So there it is, the heart of the paradox. A massive spike in the total number of deaths, a small rise in the per-person rate, but a huge drop in your individual risk. How can all three of these be true at the same time? It feels like the math just doesn't work, unless we account for an invisible force that's changing the entire equation. And that invisible force, the thing that explains everything, is one of the biggest demographic shifts in human history. As a species, we are getting much older. And this is absolutely crucial to understand. At its most basic level, cancer is a disease of time. It's about your cells dividing over and over and over again. And with every division, there's a tiny chance of a mistake, a mutation. The longer you live, the more lottery tickets you buy for that unlucky mutation. So really, the single biggest risk factor for getting cancer is just living a long life. And this is where the story gets really wild. This massive increase in cancer deaths is, bizarrely, a direct result of our incredible success in other areas of medicine. I mean, think about it. Since 1980, we've gotten so much better at treating heart attacks, at preventing kids from dying young, at fighting off infections. And the result? We've successfully kept millions of people alive, allowing them to grow old and reach the very age where cancer becomes one of the main things to worry about. To really make this idea click, let's use a super simple analogy. Let's imagine we're comparing two very different kinds of clinics. On one side, you've got the intensive care unit, the ICU. The patients there are older, they're critically ill. On the other side, you've got a local walk-in clinic, treating sprained ankles and the common cold. Now, if you only look at the crude death rate, just the raw number of people who die, the ICU's rate is going to be way higher. No question. But does that mean the ICU doctors are terrible at their jobs? Of course not, right? You'd be making a huge mistake. You'd be totally ignoring who the patients are. To make a fair comparison, you have to account for the fact that the ICU is treating a much older, much sicker group of people. And that is exactly what age standardization does for us. It's a statistical tool that lets us make a fair, apples-to-apples comparison. What statisticians do is they create this hypothetical world where the age breakdown of the population is frozen in time. They ask, okay, if our population today had the exact same percentage of 20-year-olds, 50-year-olds, and 80-year-olds as it did in 1980, what would the cancer death rate be? And when they do that, boom, The rate drops by 25%. It strips away all that demographic noise and shows you the truth about the medicine. So this 25% drop isn't just some statistical sleight of hand. It's real. It represents decades of hard work, brilliant science, and real-world public health victories. Let's break down what actually created that number. This progress really stands on three main pillars. First up, prevention. Think about all those aggressive anti-smoking campaigns. They have paid off in a huge way, leading to massively lower lung cancer rates. Second, early detection. Things like routine mammograms and colonoscopies just weren't common in 1980. Now they catch cancers at their earliest, most survivable stages. And third, and this one is huge, treatment. We've moved away from just, nuking the whole body with chemo to incredibly precise immunotherapies that actually teach your own body to fight the cancer. It's like something out of science fiction compared to where we were. So, what's the big takeaway for you? The next time you're scrolling through the news and see a scary health headline, what should you do? Well, you now have a powerful new filter to see through the hype. Just remember this quote. When a headline screams, "Cancer deaths have doubled," it's not technically lying, but it is selling you a narrative based on incomplete math. It's tricking you into mistaking a demographic success, an aging population, for a medical failure. Look, headlines are in the business of grabbing your eyeballs. In raw numbers, crude rates are a fantastic tool for generating fear and getting clicks. They tell a simple, scary story, but they almost never tell the whole story. So from now on, when you see one of those terrifying statistics about any disease that affects older people, you can just stop, take a breath, and ask the single most important question. Is this age standardized? You have to demand to see the blue line. And before we wrap up, here's one last mind-bending thought. We've seen how an aging population can hide incredible medical progress, but what's really fascinating is that the opposite can also happen. A demographic shift can hide a brand new danger. Imagine a developing city gets a massive boom of young, healthy workers moving in. If you just looked at the crude death rate for the whole city, it would probably plummet. The public health reports would look amazing. But what if a new factory was secretly poisoning the water supply? The youth and health of the new population would completely mask that danger. Their good health would hide a deadly crisis bubbling just beneath the surface. And that really proves the ultimate point here. When it comes to understanding our health, raw numbers without context aren't just a little misleading. They can be actively dangerous. You always have to ask, who are the people in the data? Because more often than not, the surface level numbers don't even begin to tell the true story.